Winona, that film was based in the modern day, or was it based in the 50s and 60s?
The early 60s, 1962.
Yeah. I just wondered, do you think young girls are that innocent as that character was these days? Do you think they go through that anymore, that kind of pain?
Well, I certainly did. I think, to me, I never really considered it a period piece. It was just kind of a timeless story of teen angst, you know. I mean, I certainly went through all that stuff. Yeah.
Yes, because Charlotte is the character. She's very inconsistent, isn't she?
Yeah, that's what fascinated me about her, was that, you know, one minute she wanted to be a nun, and the next minute she wanted to have sex with somebody, and the next minute it was something else. And she felt bad about that, but she didn't, you know, that's what happens with teenagers, is they feel guilty for having completely normal feelings. So, you know.
And for not living up to what their parents think they should be, and
exactly.
all the rest of it. Did you ever want to be a nun?
No. No.
Me neither. So, where does Mermaids come into it? It's a charming movie. Well, why is it called Mermaids?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
It sounds very symbolic, so I'm sure it means something, but I guess it's over my head.
Yeah, but I mean, the little girl in that, your sister, your younger sister, would it be anything to do with the fact that she wants to be an Olympic swimmer, so she always wears a swimming cap. Wherever she goes, she wears a swimming cap.
Right. Yeah. She's a character, isn't she?
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
Did you like working on that? I mean, never appear with children. You're no longer a child. I mean, they tend to steal the scenes a bit, don't they? Little kids.
Well, she didn't. She was like a real professional. It was her first movie, but she really handled it just like an adult would. She was very, very wise. It was a little bit scary how smart she was.
Yeah. What about Cher?
Oh, she was really amazing. She was really great and fun and helpful.
Did she give you any advice on life?
Well, sure. I mean, when I was making the movie, I guess I was 17, and I was going through a lot of my introduction to, like, my first bad press and my, you know, first weird stuff with the tabloids, and she, of course, had been through that her whole life, so she really helped me through some weird stuff that goes along with show business.
Because she's been through some weird stuff herself, hasn't she?
She certainly has, yeah.
Now, what about that weird stuff? That was over Godfather 3 or something.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. What happened?
Well, what actually happened was really simple. You know, I got sick, and I couldn't do the movie, which was, you know, devastating and terrible, and I felt really bad about it. But of course, they didn't want to. They tried to make it really complicated. The press. They tried to make it sound like, you know, I don't know. There was millions of rumors flying around, but they just couldn't deal with that. It was a very simple reason. They just really.
No, of course,
yeah.
It's a better story.
Yes, exactly.
If you were a teenager, fame has gone to your head, and you walked out on Francis Ford Coppola.
Right, which wasn't the case at all. Not at all.
Yeah. Of course, you're Johnny Depp, with whom you've made Scissorhands, which we haven't seen here, and he's your fiancé.
Yeah.
I mean, do you get a lot of that with the big romance? Is the romance on and off, and can you be seen with other boys and all this kind of?
Yeah, well, I mean, that stuff, you know, if you have a stable relationship, then it's not going to bother you. If you don't, then it probably will, and I feel pretty stable and secure.
Do you think it's important to have a stable relationship when you're 19?
Well, it's certainly helpful in this business. I mean, to have some stability, because this business, you just tend to be kind of, everything's up in the air all the time. So to have like a good family life and a good relationship with someone is pretty important to me.
Well, I often say that if I hear the phrase rites of passage movies again, I go mad, because I'm never very sure what it means. It's kind of coming of age movie. You've made a few of these. Do you think that directors know much about, or writers, grown-up writers, know much about teenagers and how they actually do come of age?
No, I think that most of the movies I see about teenagers are really pretty wrong, and I don't see, I think that it's just an adult's idea of what they want their teenagers to be like, or what, and I don't get it. It kind of bothers me, but I've always tried to avoid those and stuck to what I believe to be pretty real.
What do you think they get wrong about teenagers?
Well, you know, they just tend to really stereotype them. You know, they like to put labels on teenagers, like this one's you know, takes drugs and is a stoner or whatever they call them that week, and then the other one's a jock, and they just love to label kids when they don't treat them with enough respect.
You think you're either a good teenager or a bad teenager.
Exactly, that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, and you said it much better than I did. But you were born, you called Winona because you were born in a silly-sounding town in Minnesota.
Yes.
Minnesota's the back of beyond, isn't it, really?
Oh, it's one of my, I love it there.
Yeah. It's a long way from everywhere.
Yeah, it's like it's real out in the middle of the country.
How'd you get from Winona, Minnesota, to Los Angeles, California?
Well, I never grew up in Minnesota. I was born there because my mom is from there and she was visiting, and I just kind of came out. And we moved to San Francisco, and that's where I grew up. So I grew up in California.
Were your mother and father unconventional parents, do you think?
Well, not really. I mean, they've been called unconventional. It depends on what you mean by unconventional. They, of course, they were active in the 60s, so they got labeled as hippies when really they weren't hippies. They were just kind of more on the intellectual side of the 60s than the other side.
They weren't flower children.
No, they weren't. They were, but of course people like to make it sound like they were. And I grew up in a household where we had, rules like everybody else, and it was pretty conventional, I would think,
Were
we
they
just
strict?
had a little more. They were strict, but they were also, they encouraged us to come to them with any sort of problem that we might have that most kids aren't able to go to their parents with. Like if we had a question about, drugs or anything like that, we could go to them and they would talk to us about them and take the mystery away so we wouldn't go out and get it on the street. So they really encouraged a lot of there was a lot of communication in our family, which was really, really nice because we weren't repressed, we didn't have to go find out for ourselves what it was all about.
Is it tough for somebody like you, working in the film business, a young lady like you, to avoid drugs, to avoid drink?
I'm just not interested in it. I mean, I can see how some people might turn to it, but it just doesn't. I'm too little. It affects me too much. I get too hungover if I do anything.